soon as I put my feet into the LTT controlled area, I honestly had that feeling that I am in a place where I belong. And I could never express that feeling, how I felt when I put my feet into that area. It's like I always had that feelings, you know. I wanted to go where I really belong. And I felt like I've got answers for so many questions that I had. That's where I belong. That's my place. That's my country. That's where I should be. So it's very nice and peaceful. People were very nice. Going, you know, as soon as I went into the house, or everyone around came asking me like, oh, you know, they were so shocked to see me with long hair, because somebody from abroad, they would think I would have short hair. Well, you know, but they were really shocked to see me with long hair, and they were talking to me. And when I talked to them in Tamil, they were really surprised. Like, you know, you went when you were like very young. How did you know how to speak Tamil? Especially I was calling them by the relationships and everything. They were shocked. Like, how do you know us? How do you know I'm your uncle? Or how do you know I'm your auntie? Like, you know, I said, no, family. Mom and dad always talk about you guys, and we know, you know. So it's all like, I felt that's where I should be. That's where my soul, I mean, I always had that thought. So it just was amazing to see a separate country that we would have all been very happy, and we wouldn't have to, you know, have that displacement and come to different countries and stuff like that. And I always even now think that if the LTT had the more of a political support and the international support, we would have had a separate status in our country, Tamil Eelam, and we would have happily lived in our country. Yeah, I always knew that the LTT had the women wings as well. I mean, you know, they were equally involved in the freedom fighting, and, you know, they were equally doing everything. But for me to go and actually see it is a different experience, how developed it was. There were no like casting problems, no religious problem, no poor, no rich. Everybody was equally treated, regardless of their gender, religion, culture. I mean, everybody was treated properly. Especially with the women side, I did after a few weeks of me being there. I was actually asked to teach English for the younger generation. They had a youth center there, which were actually supported by the youth in abroad. And I was asked to teach English there. So it gave me a close relationship with the younger generation as well there, as well as with women as well. Especially the freedom fighters, women. I have actually interviewed few of them and talked to them. And I think still that I'm really fortunate that I have actually met the commanders in the women wings as well. You know, the experience of coming into the freedom fighting, like how being a woman, like being a a daughter, housewife, and it's just completely different that you're now fighting for your country. You're in charge. You're a commander now. So that kind of thing. I mean, they were all like, they never, I mean, they think it wouldn't be possible with the LTT. It would have never been possible for the Eelam Tamil woman to be that free and that equally treated like that without the LTT. It wouldn't be possible. I don't think even if I was there, I would have had that freedom without the LTT being there. So it's quite a nice experience talking to them, and especially the younger generation. I did kind of, you know, like I did have the time after classes and stuff, sit down, talk to them, how they feel about it. Because I wanted to get that feedbacks from them, how they feel about the situation, whether they are actually really wanting a separate state, Tamil Eelam, and also how they feel about being under the control of LTT and seeing the LTT as their government more like, you know, and especially the leader as well and everything. And one of the conversations we had about General like knowledge and stuff like that, which is really shocking. She was asking me about a few questions about UK Second World War, like how, because I was asking about getting underage, recruiting underage into war and stuff like that. I was just generally talking to them about it. And she said, oh, no, Akka, you know, the World War II British Army did have underage people in there and this and that. And she would start going on about the war and how Britain and America are going to war and things like that. And I said, how? Like I said, I am clueless like about the topic you're talking to me now. Even though I was brought up and did my studies and stuff in, you know, Britain. She's very interesting there. She said that, Akka, you won't learn what we learn in University of Prabhakaran, you wouldn't learn anywhere else in the world. And she started laughing about it. And, you know, she said, they call it, the younger generation call the leader Prabhakaran Mama. They said, oh, Prabhakaran Mama has actually given us all the opportunity, all the freedom to do what, you know, and in terms of education as well, they said, we are much more educated than some of the kids outside the Vani area. And it was shocking to hear that. And when she said University of Prabhakaran, I still remember that. It was actually University of Prabhakaran. He has actually created that, and I don't think I will be anywhere near, in terms of knowledge, anywhere near those kids, no. Everybody was treated equally. And there were no such a thing as poor, like rich, disability in terms. I mean, he has actually, the leader, he has actually created everything for them. So everybody had the cared homes, like even the disability. They called Navamari Vakudam, which had all the, they don't call it disabled. They had all the blind, deaf, and like all that people, which he has actually created a place for them to be free and to do whatever they want to do. In terms of making all this thing, he's very actually, the way he has created all this, that he didn't want to make anyone lazy by just doing everything for them. Instead, he actually made them do work as well. So inside their place where they were living, they had like people who know computer, they had their own job of doing stuff. So they all had their jobs and they were well developed in all the areas, from computer to drawings to writing stories, reading to everything. They had well developed, skilled people. So he had like Senjole for the kids, for the girls, and he had Kandruban for the boys. And he even had little, like a nursery kind of places, like Tamil Eelam and things like that. So, like, everything was well sort of developed into a country on its own. I had spinal cord issue. So I had to go a few times to the hospital before all the war and like all the displacement from Kilnochi and stuff like that before. I have met them, I've talked to them, and because I have a medical background as well, we had quite a lot of conversations about the medical. Even then, it's really amazing how he has created the medical team as well. So he had his own medical team for the public, as in for the civilians. Separate hospital, had well-developed hospital that you walk in and you would just feel like you were somewhere like internationally, somewhere around abroad in a country.
This was run by the LTT?
Before the Kilnochi displacement and everything. It was well-developed hospital. Had all the equipments that needed, all the medication, everything was there. Even the doctor were very skilled, highly skilled doctors for the civilian. And he had a separate medical unit for the LTT as well. So they're well, you know, kind of skilled for that specifically. So I spoke to both doctors actually, the doctor who was in charge for the LTT medical wing as well as the normal civilians government doctor. It's quite amazing how they developed all this, like, you know, with skilled doctors from abroad went and given training them and studying and things like that. After Mullivaikkal, when I went, I volunteered to go and work in the hospital, the civilians hospital. It was all like, because already Kilnochi displacement has took place and everything, so they were temporarily having the hospital. Even then, they had everything well, like, sort of in place, ready to treat the people and ready to give the service that the people needed. Which was quite surprising for me, because I have grown up in a country, well-developed country, worked in hospitals here, so I know how the hospital system in UK works. For me to go and see there, it's completely a different experience. Towards the end, when we didn't have enough medications and equipments and stuff like that, because every time when we displaced, the hospital actually displaced, they left equipments. They couldn't, because it was in a rush. The war coming very close, every day was close by, shell bombs and things like that. The vehicles were shelled, and so the hospital has to leave quite a lot of equipments and come. And finally, when we have actually in the final stage of treating people, we didn't have any gloves. Without the gloves, they were doing the operations and stuff like that. They didn't have any medical proper equipment to do their surgeries and stuff like that. And it was really upsetting to see all that. And for me, it was really difficult to see, because I would never ever dream of doing that in this country here. Sort of filtering the blood with the white piece of cloth and then re-entering into the patient. Those kind of things in medical practice would never do it. So even in that situation, the doctors knew exactly what to do for the people. And this is how they trained them. And it was shocking for me to see all that. And it was the upsetting side of it as well, that the doctors had the hardest choice to make, because towards the end we were not allowed to take any people with a head injury, because obviously knowing that we don't have enough equipments and things like that. And I still do remember one of the guy, he was probably 6, 7, 8 years old. He was crying, begging me as I walking past him in the hospital. He said, I lost my mum, I lost my sister, I lost the whole family in a shell bomb in the bunker. I have only my dad now. Can you please save him? And this is exactly his words, and he was begging me. And at that time, it was really difficult for me. I mean, it was easy for the other doctors and other staff, because they have grown up in a war situation. Whereas for me, it's all really completely new. I didn't know what to say to that boy. I looked at him and I said, okay, I will, take care of your dad. All I did was just put some bandage around his head and everything. But I know that his head injuries, there's no way he's going to survive for more than a few hours. He's going to get blood clots into the brain, and eventually he's going to die. There's no way we can save him. It's quite really big at the back of his head. So for me, it's a really difficult situation to deal with. But as days went past, it get all used to it. I got used to it as well, like any other staff. But I still remember that boy's words begging me, like, it's difficult. To me, I never thought LTT were a terrorist organization in the first place, because if there were terrorist organizations, say, why would, for the past 30, 35 years, the people supported LTT? That's the first question. Secondly, why would they, even after the ceasefire, I mean, the people had the choice during the ceasefire. They were freely going in and out Jaffna, they come into Colombo, like they're so free to do anything they wanted. And we had UN went there during that time. We had, all the other officials from other countries went there. The people had the choice at that time to decide what they wanted, or the people had the choice to leave Vanni if they thought that they were under the control of LTT. But people didn't want to do that. People still wanted to stay in Vanni, and because they thought that's where they belong. So there's no reason for the international community to say that people were there without their people didn't want to stay with the LTT. And when I went there as well, I never felt like anybody in there that I mean, I haven't come across any negative conversation with people about LTT. They were all really proud that they have a government, they have everything they need, they have a country, they're living peacefully. I mean, I never had any alcohol problems there. Never people you can't see younger generation drinking or anything that wasn't allowed. Even for older generation to drink, there's certain times they had. So everything was very disciplined and very, very peaceful environment for the people to live. And so I don't think that anybody would say that they were there forced to stay in the LTT controlled area. And not just that, but moreover, I mean, people had at least one, even a daughter or a son. Everybody had a daughter or a son in the freedom fighting. And then you had people working for the LTT in the admin area and everything. So they had their own country. So why would anybody want to leave that? And the respect they had for the LTT and also for the leader, it's amazing how people talk about him. I don't think I have ever come across anybody said anything negative about the leader or the LTT as in the whole government. With the international community doing the propagandas about LTT being terrorists and they're not giving the chance for the people to sort of have a choice of whether they want I think from my experience, even if you go and ask the people there secretly, they would say they want the LTT back, they want their country back, they want the Tamil Eelam back. And I never ever felt safe traveling after 6 o'clock in UK, even though you have the legal rights and you have the police force and quite in this country. But I never felt after 6 o'clock traveling in UK on my own. But this time in Vani, I traveled at 2 o'clock at night times, and I know that I'll still be safe. No one would dare to do anything to you, and you know that because it's your people, and it had all people had that peaceful and freedom to live their life. So to me, I'm always happy that I have lived in Tamil Eelam, and which most of the younger generation in the country don't have the opportunity. But I have seen it, I lived, and I felt, and it's really unfortunate that now everything into pieces. But hopefully, I wish that one day I would have the same feeling walking into my country, that feeling. I never believed in politics from the beginning, and if there was a solution politically, or if the people have believed that there will be a political solution, I don't think they would have gone through armed struggle for 35 years. I mean, there's no reason for it. Why? So to me, a political solution will never ever work out, and I don't believe in that either. During the ceasefire time, international community has gone there, officials, UN people has gone in there, and they've seen it. The international community was afraid that if they were afraid of the power of LTT, and they knew from the ceasefire time that the people had 100% support for the LTT, and eventually LTT would have actually got the Tamil Eelam as a separate state, and the whole international and UN were afraid of it. For political reason, obviously. They didn't want to have somebody like Leader Prabhakaran to sort of have a separate state, obviously being economically and sort of politically to be a threat to the international. So for them, it's because of that they had all this propaganda of terrorism and things like that. And to me, after Mulli Vaikal, I don't think much of a political I mean, I don't have any hope that there will be a political solution. Because when I was there as well, during the Mulivaikal, like towards the end of Mulivaikal, I have actually personally written letters to UN. This is happening. I have given interview from there to UK Guardian newspaper as well. That this is, people don't have food, we don't have medicine. They're shelling the hospitals, and there were time and there were ways that they would have stopped all that happening, but nothing was done at that time. So, and even after coming into the camps, I have seen UN, people working inside the camp and everything, and I never had the hope that there will be a, and till now I think that for Tamil people, nobody's going to look after them better than LTT. That's the truth. And my the other disappointment that I have is that even the Tamil organizations, like there are quite a lot of organization after Mulivaikal, I mean, used to be all well controlled by the LTT and they had their own, but afterwards there were quite a lot of political organization came up and everything. But there's again a big disappointment that they haven't done much to, not to resolve the problem, but for the people who have gone through that war, what have we done as the diaspora community to help the people to rebuild their life back again there? Not much has been happening. Everybody is kind of talking about political solution into getting a Tamil Eelam and separate state or any other solution for the Tamil people, but nobody's thinking about the after effect of the war and the people to rebuild their life. They need to rebuild their families first in order to think about what they want for the future. And to me personally, I think that we have, as diaspora, have no rights to decide, either politically or armed struggle or whatever, to decide what we want. We can't decide what we want, whether we want Tamil Eelam or not, or whether we want a political solution, or whether we want another armed struggle. We have, as diaspora, no rights to think about that. After all, the people who are back home, they are the ones going through it throughout their life. They are the ones lost everything. They are the ones still struggling, and they are the ones still being tortured. So only they can decide what they want, and as diaspora community is our responsibility and to support what they want instead of determining what we want. But I am expecting some sort of international involvement into this, which again, very disappointing. And me doing all these witness statements or interviews and things like that, going to UN, giving interviews and media and reports and things like that, I never believed in the international community, and I will never. And I'm only doing all this is because back home the people think and they believe that I'm doing something here. And only because of them that I'm doing all this. Other than that, there's no reason for me to believe that there will be something happening. And there's another thing that I personally believe that we could never ever, I think as Tamils, would never ever forgive the international community for what they have done. Even our history will never forgive for what they have done, because in the process of eliminating the LTTE, they have intentionally let the innocent people die, and that's something could never ever been forgiven in history. And I do believe that somewhere along the line in future there will be a solution for the Tamils. And that solution, it can only be a separate state, Tamil Eelam. There's no other solution to it. But how we're gonna get to the solution, it's down to the people back home to decide.